Major MAGA Republicans have been publicly and consistently blaming Democrats for the failed assassination attempt on Donald Trump. But the public reporting and the evidence gathered so far have brutally torpedoed that conspiracy theory. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video. Quite frankly, I didn't know if I was going to do a video about this because the investigation is still ongoing. But we have learned from investigations, from public reporting over a span of several days from multiple sources, new details about the shooter, the attempted assassin of former president and convicted felon Donald Trump. And given the pervasive MAGA conspiracy theories and the Republican talking points blaming President Biden and the Democrats for the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, I felt it was worth talking about. So first things first, let's be very clear about this. These aren't just random people on Twitter, random conservatives or MAGA Republicans, fellow day-to-day citizens who are just blaming Democrats. That's bad enough, but these are citizens, right? It's actually people in power, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and major conservative influencers, including the current Republican vice presidential running mate, J.D. Vance, all of whom have suggested that Joe Biden and Democrats are somehow morally or perhaps even legally, literally responsible for the failed assassination attempt on Donald Trump. I want to play some clips to really just drive that point home, the level of conspiracism. Marjorie Taylor Greene said in the aftermath, we're in a battle between good and evil. The Democrats are the party of pedophiles murdering the innocent unborn, violence and bloody, meaningless, endless wars. They want to lock up their political opponents and terrorize innocent Americans who would tell the truth about it. The Democrat Party is flat out evil, and yesterday they tried to murder Donald Trump. Now, again, that's not a random Twitter nobody. That is a sitting MAGA Republican congresswoman publicly blaming a party comprised of tens of millions of Americans and their leadership for the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Now, that would be inexcusable and despicable no matter what. And you might be thinking perhaps she moderated her rhetoric in the aftermath. But no, as a matter of fact, several days later during the Republican National Convention, this is what Marjorie Taylor Greene had to say publicly to interviewers.
Well, you know, Joe Biden, the Democrats, and the media complex here in America has been vilifying and demonizing us for years now. They've called us horrific names and lied about us, called us Nazis. They called President Trump Hitler. They've called us fascist. They've accused us of destroying democracy. Literally, while these people censor our free speech, have ripped our borders wide open to people coming into our country all over the world, and have basically talked about destroying our freedoms. When Joe Biden and the Democrats want to apologize for that language, when they want to totally stop the weaponized government, drop all the charges against President Trump, release all the political prisoners, Steve Bannon, I'll mention him specifically, and many other people that innocently protested the election on January 6th, then we can have a talk about unity. But there'll be no unity when they're attacking us like this and using the power of the federal government against their political opponents.
So as you can tell, she's doubled down. She's not backing down. And she says specifically that Joe Biden and the Democrats are responsible for the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Okay. Now, obviously, everything she said there was nonsense. It's not the Democrats weaponizing the federal government. A Democratic senator was just successfully prosecuted, as many Democrats and former Democrats have been prosecuted as former Republicans and current Republicans. All of that is nonsense. But the bottom line, the reason I'm bringing this up first is just to illustrate the fact that Republicans have been blaming President Biden and the Democrats. And yet, as more details emerge about the shooter, it actually paints a very, very, very different story. So I want to play a couple of clips, and we're going to look into some of the up-to-date reporting about the shooter.
Crooks's motive is still unclear. Records show he is a registered Republican, and neighbors today told us that they've actually seen Trump signs outside of the home over the course of the last few years.
Well, that seems to run contrary to what they have to say. The fact that right now there is no discernible political motive, at least with respect to ideology, but the fact that he was a registered Republican who lived in a house which, according to neighbors, had flown Trump and MAGA paraphernalia. That's interesting, isn't it? It seems to run contrary to the notion that this person was a far left radical or even a member of the Democratic Party, right? Some additional reporting as well about the home and the family of Thomas Crooks, the would-be assassin of Donald Trump.
Channel 4 News can reveal that Thomas Crooks's father, the owner of the rifle that was used to shoot at Donald Trump, was held on a database and profiled by the former president's election campaign and identified by them as a strong Republican supporter, gun owner and hunter. The information was compiled as part of a secret Republican project to gather data on millions of gun owners across America and use it to target pro-gun messages in the run-up to the 2016 election. And here's why they did it. The city of Pittsburgh is a key battleground in the critical swing state of Pennsylvania, so voters here are always heavily profiled and targeted by political parties, like the Trump campaign in 2016, which held voters' details on a database, including, as we've discovered, the shooter's family, Matthew Crooks and his wife Mary, who lived here at 2506 Milford Drive in Bethel Park. We know they profiled them using secret computer models to identify likely gun owners and enthusiasts, and Mr. Crooks scored very highly, 0.99 out of 1 for being a gun owner and 0.95 out of 1 for being a hunter. In fact, out of more than 19,000 people in Bethel Park who were profiled, Mr. Crooks was in the top 20, and the database classified him as a strong GOP.
So, again, not that the father is somehow morally or legally culpable for his son's heinous actions, but it does go to show that there was a strong Republican conservative influence in this person's immediate vicinity. Doesn't preclude the idea that perhaps, he took a shot at Trump to spite his father. There's no telling. We're not ruling anything out. And that's why one of the reasons that I have avoided talking about this at length until more detail came out, because we still don't have a definitive ideological or political motivation, and perhaps there isn't one. But the point is that the evidence and the facts gathered strongly lean away from the notion that this person was radicalized by President Biden, Democrats, liberals, progressives, leftists, socialists, or anything to attack Donald Trump for political purposes. It seems that there were more Republican and conservative influences in his life and within his profile, within his background, than there were liberal and progressive. And that's a fact worth noting, since MAGA Republicans have been claiming without evidence that somehow Biden and the Democrats are responsible. The New York Times, the nation's leading newspaper, despite my frustrations with them about their focus with respect to political editorials, focusing disproportionately on the negatives of Biden compared to Trump, they have an up-to-date op-ed about this. From honor student to the gunman who tried to kill Donald Trump, Thomas Crooks was a brainy and quiet young man who built computers and won honors at school, impressing his teachers. Then he became a would-be assassin. Okay, we're not going to read the whole thing, but this is worth talking about. In dozens of interviews, former classmates, teachers, and neighbors said they could not square their memories of Crooks with the image of the stringy-haired gunman at the rally, armed with his father's AR-15 style rifle, as he clambered onto the rooftop and took aim at Donald Trump. Quote, "That's where I'm struggling. I've looked at horrific pictures of an individual that I stood 6 inches away from, shaking his hand, calling on him in class," says Javier or Xavier, I'm not sure, Harmon, who saw Mr. Crooks almost daily in the computer science class he taught. Investigators have uncovered what now could be seen as a concerning signs. The gunman's phone showed that he had possibly read news stories about the teenage shooter who killed 4 students at Oxford High in Michigan. Crooks received multiple packages, including several that were marked hazardous materials over the past several months. He looked up major depressive disorder on a cell phone. He also searched a bipartisan roster of political figures, including Trump, President Biden, and Attorney General Merrick Garland. FBI officials told members of Congress. He also looked up both the dates of Trump's July 13th rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, as well as the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. But investigators have not found any evidence that Crooks had strong political beliefs or an ideological motivation. Experts who study the histories of gunmen said the emerging picture of Crooks looked more like a 21st century school shooter than a John Wilkes Booth. John Wilkes Booth, of course, being the man who assassinated President Lincoln. Quote, "When somebody attacks a president, our gut instinct is to say that must be politically motivated," said James Denley, founder of the Violence Project, which has compiled a comprehensive database of mass shootings. Quote, "What we might be seeing here is this is somebody intent on perpetrating mass violence, and they happen to pick a political rally." Let's see. Some additional information here. Crooks was a registered Republican, though records show he also donated $15 to a progressive cause on the day of President Biden's inauguration on January 2021. And the Republican registration would come afterwards. 8 months later, he would register as a Republican. Voting records show his mother is a Democrat and his father and older sister are libertarians. The Trump era has brought tensions to local politics in Bethel Park, a traditionally Republican town that's now almost evenly divided. Trump beat Biden by just 65 votes in 2020. Some houses fly Trump flags and Let's Go Brandon banners. Others have Stronger Together yard signs. MAGA fans in surrounding towns hold flag-waving rallies on highway bridges to provoke liberals. Now, and again, some have said that they found Trump-related paraphernalia in the Crooks family yard. Others say that the Crooks family did not put out yard signs to display their politics. In fact, they said they rarely saw the family at all. So the bottom line with this, folks, and I definitely encourage you, if this is something to keep track of, if the assassination story interests you, especially in response to MAGA Republicans making definitive claims. We don't know. There may end up being some sort of ideological motivation, but the evidence doesn't seem to be pointing in that direction. So it would be shocking or surprising if that's the case. The reason I'm bringing this up is because it's wildly irresponsible in the aftermath of an event like this to, without evidence, assert that my God, we've talked about how MAGA Republican politicians like Mike Collins of Georgia literally said on Twitter that President Biden gave the order to the shooter to kill Donald Trump. Not only is there no evidence of a pro-Democrat political motivation to kill Trump, there is no evidence at all that President Biden somehow gave the order. You see what I'm saying? It's not just an inference. It's 72 leaps, irresponsible leaps that Republican politicians like J.D. Vance, like Mike Collins, and like Marjorie Taylor Greene should not be making. This is infinitely more egregious, the rhetoric that they are employing, than the rhetoric of Democratic politicians like President Biden, who refer to Donald Trump as a threat to democracy. He is a threat to democracy. We talked about this before in the one video I did in the aftermath of the shooting. Political violence is unacceptable, period. It's unacceptable against Democrats. It's unacceptable against Republicans. Okay. But we also should not be bullied or gaslit out of describing Trump the way he is. Donald Trump is an authoritarian. He is a threat to democracy. And that's precisely why eligible voters should turn up to the ballot box during the election in November, right? There is the justice system to try to hold Trump accountable for his crimes. And there is the political accountability associated with an election. The election is November 5th. Turn up the second or the first week, in November, the first Tuesday. Turn up. If the anti-Trump coalition turns up to vote him out of office, he will not win the election. There are more anti-Trumpers than there are pro-Trumpers in this country, no matter how divided we are. And with respect to the shooting itself, again, the investigation's ongoing. We have no idea what will eventually be conclusively revealed, but the evidence so far has been laid squarely in contradiction to the wild, inappropriate, dangerous claims coming not from MAGA randos on Twitter, but MAGA Republican politicians and conservative influencers. And that should be called out relentlessly, because right now, their conspiracy theories have imploded. Let me know what you think in the comments.